Okay, let's watch some more Iran stuff. This was posted 30 minutes ago. This is breaking shit. Okay. Iran is united. Iranian journalist reports from Tehran. So we'll see what someone from Iran has to say, or Iran has to say, about what's going on there. Hopefully we can get some good news and it's not all death and destruction. But I'm not getting my hopes up. Let's go.
Very honored to be joined here by Naveed Zarinal, who's the host of the Colony
Sorry.
Archive and, of course, is on the ground in Iran. Naveed, thank you so much for being with
Yeah,
us.
thank you, man. I guess you are here. It says
Eugene,
it says 0 viewers right now. So I maybe there are people watching and I just don't know. So this Streamlabs thing is a little maybe it's a little janky.
Ania, thank you so much for having me.
Well, the first question I will pose to you, Naveed, is what is the situation there? I mean, we are seeing a lot of reports in the news that the level of bombing and attacks is very significant.
Sure. So I woke up on a Saturday morning and I turned on the news and Israel and U.S. had attacked Iran, but I kind of just went about my day doing some chores around the house. But then by 12, by noon, I started hearing the Iranian interceptors intercepting the Israeli and the American bombs. And I live about 50 meters away from IRGC garrison. It's a very large garrison, one of the biggest ones in the
Garrison.
capital. And then I saw an explosion either inside the garrison or behind it. I knew that things were about to go down. And I insisted on staying in my apartment, even though I live in central Tehran, where there are a lot of IRGC locations and police stations. So it is not the safest location. So I
Yeah,
eventually
they've been
ventured,
going after the police systems or the police stations. They're trying to, you know, uh, get all the people who could create order in society. They're trying to kill them all. So
home that was west of Tehran in a kind of a less insecure area of the city. And then on Sunday, they started bombing intensely my neighborhood and some of the glass in the building broke in the parking area. And then what has been happening since? So I think we're in the sixth day of the unprovoked U.S. Israeli assault on Iran. Is that the bombing campaigns is pretty intense. So they have targeted both military and police locations and also civilian areas. So either it's being done
classic.
intentionally or recklessly, or as a result of the damage to the surrounding military area. So I can give you some examples. So the Gandhi Hospital in Tehran was targeted. Also the police park. So there's a park named Police, but it has nothing to do with the Iranian police force. Rather, it's just called Police, and that was also targeted. Um, and then also a school of 168 girls in Ninab, which is city in
Every time I
Iran
hear that,
south,
man,
that was also targeted,
so
and all
many,
those girls
so
were
many children, so many lives. You know, what could have been?
killed. There are the military areas being
And I
targeted.
do this. So okay. I have a really hard time processing individual, like brutality on an individual level. It's just who I am as a person. Okay, so I don't ever really watch the really brutal videos or anything. Of like what's happening because it really just makes me so sad that I just can't watch it. I can deal with it in the abstract, and I think that like that's the only way that I can consume stuff. So anytime I hear about the actual, you know, that sort of stuff, it just makes me at least I don't have to like see it or whatever, but it still makes me very sad.
And also the civilian areas. And there have been, I think, over 1,000 deaths so far.
I mean, Naveed, the image seeing, the videos we're seeing, it's so reminiscent of Gaza, of
Hmm.
Lebanon, what we're used to seeing in Lebanon. I want to ask you though about, that first video that Trump put out when he announced that he had launched this war with the Israelis last Saturday. He ended it by calling on the Iranian people to rise up. You'll never have a chance to rise up against your
Rise
government.
up.
And then now in the last couple of days, we're hearing that the U.S. is arming or working
Yeah.
with a separatist group, particularly a Kurdish militia, but there are other separatist groups around Iran as well as particularly around Iran's borders. Um, and so I'm curious about your thoughts on whether how plausible.
Yeah, there's a lot of so the Kurdish militia thing, that's one of the things that actually does kind of scare me. They always this is classic America stuff, classic imperialist stuff, but um the Kurdish people, they don't have a state. They're essentially a stateless people, and they are, there's lots of, groups and militias that are Kurdish, or like in and around Tehran. And so they could like they this is America like essentially arming them to try and get them to, destabilize Iran. And I they they might do it because they think that this is their chance for to get a country or a state or a home or whatever. I I really hope that they, you know, don't succeed in that though. Like, I feel sorry for the Kurdish people, but they are being used as pawns by the American, like by America right now. And they won't get out of this, they won't get what they want out of this if they go along with it.
Plausible that is, and what that might look like, because we've known for a long time that covertly the U.S. And the CIA have been trying to work with groups, Israelis as well, by the way, to essentially destabilize Iran.
That's right. So, yes, I mean, there is the threat of the Kurdish militias entering Iran through Iraq and through the borders. But the reports that I'm seeing right now from the Iranian media, I'm not on the border town, so I can actually have firsthand experience of it. But the reports that I'm seeing from the Iranian media is that the IRGC has targeted the assets of the Kurdish militias in Iraq. And so the threat has subsided. And the
Okay, that's
Iranian
good.
courts are I would say, generally loyal to the idea of Iran as a whole because they're some of the oldest Iranian people. So the Kurds and the Kurdish-speaking people are some of the oldest Iranian people, and they have a very strong sense of nationalism. And I would say the separatist elements within the Iranian courts, it's not comparable
Yeah,
to.
and it's very complex. This dynamic is very complex, and I don't know all of it either. So I'm learning here just along with you guys. So if I ever say anything that's wrong, um, I apologize. I'm doing my best here. I'm just a dumb American from the Midwest, like so. Take everything I'm saying a little, like, especially when it comes to the intricacies of like all of the various groups and factions in and around Iran. I'm doing my best, and I think I have a decent knowledge. I have more knowledge than the average American, but I'm by no means an expert. So, this guy knows way more than I do.
Iraq or Syria or Turkey. So in that sense, I would say the courts will likely, most of them will remain loyal to the idea of Iran. So
Let's
even
hope.
if they're opposed to the government, they will not cause major problems when it comes to Iran's territorial integrity. But the other thing is, outside these separatist groups, there's also the risk of the opposition that is supported by U.S. and Israel, or they're mentally colonized and impacted by the Western controlled media. So we have a very large Persian language media network that is funded by the Zionists and by the Westerners, and people do
Propaganda.
watch and
Yeah.
consume the information from them. And some of those people might come to the streets, but thus
Okay.
far, because
Thanks
of the
again, man.
assassination of the Iranian leader, Sayyid Ali Khamenei,
Have fun
there's
at
so
the,
many
or
pro-revolution
I don't
forces
know if it's gonna be fun, but you know, good luck at the allergy doctor.
and people on the streets that they have not had a chance to come out yet. But if that momentum, the revolutionary momentum, subsides, then there's a risk that they will come to the streets and there might be some civil unrest.
Naveed, one thing I want to just get your response to is, of course, the Trump administration's so-called justifications. You mentioned earlier this was an unprovoked attack. Of course, they're claiming all sorts of things, that
Who
are very
cares what they're claiming?
contradictory on sort of quote unquote imminent threat. But I think with the deeper under sort of underlying basis they're trying to lay is that Iranians, want to kill Americans, that they hate Americans, that there's all these other things. So
Dude,
uh,
we live in hell. This is hell. We have to go. We're in purgatory. We have to listen to the same arguments over and over again. They don't even care if they work anymore. They just keep parroting the same shit, forcing it down our throats. Like, get the funnel out. Here's your shit, everybody. Just, it's so annoying. I hate it.
as an Iranian who is there, I wonder how you respond to these sorts of accusations that the Trump administration is using to back this attack.
That's right. So I would say that I think any person who would use their brain and would use evidence
Hey,
and
I use my
facts
brain
would
all the time.
understand that there is no imminent Iranian threat to the Americans. So
And I came up with, hey, and I agreed with that. So clearly I do have a brain, according to this guy at least. Maybe not according to some of the people who watch my videos, but you know.
when the Americans brought their naval fleet, that was a major threat to Iran. But Iran did not strike American assets until U.S. and Israel started their operations and assassinated the Iranian leader, who is dear to both Iranians and the larger Shia community around the world. So I would say the idea of an imminent Iranian threat has always been.
Like I know they would never do it, but I do sometimes think about an alternative timeline where Iran like actually preemptive strike Israel. You know what I'm saying? Like they knew Israel was going to strike whether they did anything or not, and they like actually preemptive strike them. I say all the time that I think the idea of a preemptive strike is stupid, like it shouldn't exist. But like if we're gonna have them, like they could have done that, like according to the UN Charter, I guess it's legal, but like but like I don't know, like what would that have looked like? I'm sure that all of the Western powers would have like immediately condemned it and be like, this was an unprovoked attack, like, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think
Bogus.
about that.
I mean, and you're very right that the contradictions are ridiculous because one day they say that they obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. The other day they say that Iran, Witkoff said that Iran is
George
only a
Orwell,
week
dude.
away from making nuclear weapons. So it's
Everything's Orwellian. It all up is down, left is right. You know, that's the way it is.
is filled with contradictions and bogus, and there is no imminent threat. And I think that even American officials admitted, some of the Democrats admitted that there has not been any evidence presented to us that Iran poses an imminent threat. And when Iran targeted the U.S. bases around the region, that was again in retaliation to U.S. bullying and to U.S. aggression and to also U.S. helping Israel conduct its war on Iran.
Naveed, I want to ask you in terms of the sort of, I had you on the show, on my show, Dispatches, a month ago to talk about the aftermath of the protests earlier in the year. And we were
The
talking about
protests
you were
killed 80 million people, I heard. Man, oh, those IRGC people. I can't believe they killed all those people.
making
Just kidding. It was like, I think they said like 3,000 from the Iranian perspective.
a criticism of the Iranian government that part of the reason they were in the situation they were in is because they had been unresponsive in using this strategic patience against the Americans and Israelis, and it hadn't worked. And it actually, in fact, empowered them. And I'm curious now, a month later, after this war has been unleashed on Iran, what do you make of the Iranian response and this kind of end of the era of strategic patience?
That's right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I hate that I was right, but I was so cynical about the negotiations. And I told your
Mhm.
audience in that video episode that we did that the negotiations are just bogus and there's
Yeah.
no real reason to negotiate because,
He
it is
sounds
just
like a smart guy. Like, yeah, the negotiations were bullshit from the start. They were just a way to get leverage. America did not care about like Iran's nuclear program, or like they obviously they didn't want him to get a nuke, but they also knew that they weren't trying to get a nuke. So from the outset, like they were negotiating in bad faith, and um, they were just looking for any excuse they could. They're still looking for the excuse. They haven't found it yet. The excuse is, I don't know, buried under like 10 foot of earth or something. Like they cannot find an excuse that works. Like they were just looking for any pretense to attack Iran.
facade. Diplomacy is a facade for war. And I said that there might be an opportunity to negotiate with a change in presidency or in a few years. But at this moment,
Ugh.
or let's say last month,
Don't
negotiations.
okay. Don't put your hopes on that. The next president, like I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I really don't know. Let's say hypothetically we get a Democratic president. Let's say our anointed Democratic God King Gavin Newsom comes in. Just centrist reactionary liberal type. Doesn't have very good like policies on a bunch of stuff, and will likely like I don't know if he ends the war. Like if he comes in, I think that he keeps it going. It's like it's all bipartisan. All this shit is bipartisan. Unless you get a true anti-war candidate, like a true leftist candidate, like or someone who can be actively pressured by the left base, like I don't see how it ends in that perspective, and then that just ushers in the next like Republican fascist or whatever. And that's just all assuming that like again, they're making a big assumption here. Is the administration going to change? like even if the people want it to, is the administration in America going to change? Like I don't know. It's kind of up in the air at this point.
It was clear there was a facade for war, and then the U.S. and Israel would eventually attack. And it was also a strategy by the U.S. and Israelis to put the blame on the Iranians, because the idea was that, well, we came to negotiate and they did not accept our offer. The same thing they did with the Palestinians, because if you talk to the Zionists, they always have these kind of fancies that the Israelis offered great peace deals to the Palestinians and they rejected it.
Oh,
But if you actually look at the
lies.
content of those deals, it was always extremely one-sided and
Yeah.
unfair. And it was the same thing with
Lie,
Iran. So
cheat, and
what
steal.
Trump was offering to the
The
Iranians was that we
American Israeli
basically
way.
surrender and then we'll bomb you anyways. And of course, they're not going to accept that. They're not going to accept the Syria type situation. So the negotiations were going on, but then Donald Trump blew up the negotiations table at the request of Netanyahu in Israel. And we are in the situation that we are now. But as you correctly said, the whole kind of restraint and a strategic patience and going along with all the etiquettes of diplomacy, that's over for now. And Iran, from the reports that I'm seeing here and what I'm, seeing on the streets, is responding pretty.
Yep, it had to end at some point. The strategic patience, it had to end at some point. It was a good strategy. They waited for America to get like less and less powerful to weigh in on the world stage. And they waited as long as they could, but there was an inevitability that America would lash out the weaker it got. Um, and so at some point you do have to use those missiles. They're there for this particular purpose. I think now was probably the right time to do this. Like I said, it was inevitable that America was going to do this. And so I think and inevitable that Iran would at some point have to use like a bunch of their missiles and like do this, actual war, uh, like war, defensive war from their perspective against America. So now is probably the time. I think the IRGC and the command structure made a good call in terms of like not perpetually waiting, because we've seen other countries kind of perpetually wait to like use all of their stuff, and I don't think it really ends up working. Like at some point you gotta use those missiles for what they were always going to be used for.
Forcefully to the unprovoked U.S.-Israeli attack.
And Naveed, you mentioned some of the regional anger and protest at the assassination of the supreme leader. And, as someone who, you've lived in Pakistan, you know some of the different regional pieces. And we saw certainly there in Pakistan, maybe most notably, not only large protests against the action of assassinating the supreme leader, but, significant killings of protesters. I wonder if you could give people some insight into that. I mean, Kashmir, we've seen large protests and different things, because I think from the, American perspective, the U.S. perspective, people only see negative things and might not have any real insight into why there might be large numbers of people in countries that are, considered U.S. allies, who are deeply opposed to what took place with that assassination.
Yes, Eugene, I'm glad that you confirmed that, because I can only see the Iranian media right now, and I saw massive crowds coming out in Kashmir and in South Asia and in Iraq from the Iranian media. So it seems like from your side, you're also seeing a lot of reports about that. And yeah, so I think what the Trump administration was ignorant of, or they just completely ignored, is that the way they
Stupid. They're stupid. You like they weren't ignorant. They're stupid. You can just say it. Like they're stupid. They're are the people with the biggest guns in the world, the most amount of nukes. They're all stupid. Th're dumb. Just yeah. Okay.
assassinated Sayyid Ali Khamenei had a very, it fit into the Shia narrative because we are in the month of Ramadan. And
And sorry, they're I gotta go back. They're not just stupid in the like normal State Department sense that they believe their own propaganda, and they're like they believe in the the inevitability of America to like defeat everything, even though even like when you look back at our previous wars that we've been in, we like objectively lost them all. Like it's more that like these ones are even dumber. They are the some of the dumbest people you will ever like meet in your entire life. Like even your average American and might be smarter than them. And that is saying something. The Americans are very like I don't want to say that they're like dumb, but they are very tuned out and like unaware. And but they still I think have a better sense of like reality. They're more connected to reality than this administration.
the first Shia Imam, Imam Ali, was assassinated, was killed in month of Ramadan, and the anniversary of his assassination is coming up. And also,
I guess
Khamenei
these are
was
the
killed
protests.
alongside his family members. So
That's
one
a
of
lot of
his
people.
14 months granddaughter.
So the last time they did this, there were all these stories, all these news stories about the like the people who were against the regime or whatever whenever the 12-day war happened. But then when you looked at the Iranian coverage, there were millions of people, like 1 to 2 million people, like out just marching in the streets or whatever in favor of the regime. Um, and so I'm guessing something similar is happening here. They might be a little more scared this time because this one's a lot more severe, but
Was assassinated, was killed by U.S. and Israel as well. So the whole assassination fits the Shia narrative, and there's a lot of
it's so
linkages
badass, dude.
between
I love this shit. This is me just being a little like, revolutionary like symbol lover or whatever, but the AR-15 or whatever this type of weapon is, I'm not good with guns. I don't know what they are, but on like the flags and stuff, I just think that's so badass.
the Iranian leader now and the first and the third Shia imams that have a very significant martyrdom story around them, and they're revered by Shias around the world. And so now that we see this regional support, I think that is creating a lot of problems for the Americans because they're not safe anywhere in the region now. I mean, their consulates are being attacked in Karachi. The Iraqi militias will likely continue to target American interests. So, I mean, I think the kind of hole that Trump has walked himself into and walked the Americans into is that he's creating so much insecurity for the Americans in the region. And I saw the photos of the four American soldiers who were killed in
They shouldn't
I
have
think it
died.
was a Kuwaiti base in which they were killed.
But hey, when they're out there, like that's the risk that we're taking. We're making that choice. That's our fault. Like we shouldn't. This was a war of choice by us.
After the Iranian strikes against the American bases, and that also saddened me. I mean,
And
they're
that's what they're there for. That's what those people are in those bases for. They are sitting ducks. They are pawns. They are. We leave them there to be targets, to be killed. And I wouldn't even be surprised. And I don't know for sure. But like I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of left some people in some bases like intentionally, like trying to let some American soldiers die so that we can then like get the public more on board with the war. Like I would not be surprised if that was the case.
so many people who are dying here more than the number of Americans that are being killed in the region, and that's extremely sad. But I mean, for me, even though I'm Iranian, I'm not thinking about it in nationalist terms as such. Rather, I see these Americans too because they're coming to the military due to the lack of healthcare and lack of subsidized education or free
True.
education in the U.S. And you could see their faces. I mean, they looked, they looked like they were coming from poverty, and that was
Mm.
also extremely sad for me to see. I mean,
Yeah, this is something like I can give my opinion here as an American. As like an American sort of like left-leaning person or whatever. Um, I have grades of like my distaste or like lack of distaste uh, for American service members. I like America is imperialist. Our army is imperialist. The people who are doing, boots on the ground sort of stuff, they are engaged in, acts of imperial dominance. That's not good. I wish more people were aware of that. But also, it's a complex subject because they are kind of often forced into situations like that based on poverty. So I have like a sort of order of like degrees with that, where the people I hate the most are the rich people who are like joining the military for their future political careers. I like think like Pete Buttigieg or JD Vance, like those types of people who are like we're going into the military and we are rich and our parents are rich and we know exactly what we're doing and we're just doing this to further like they're the worst of the worst of our military people. Then you have like dumb people who come from rich families that I don't necessarily feel that bad for either because they had the means. But then you have poor people who come from uh, like families and they have nothing else that they can find. Like they have no other like place that they can go and they turn to the military. Um, and those are the ones that I feel a little bit like sad for and a little bit, um, I'm very much anti-imperialist, but it's a complex subject that like there's no black and white answer to, and it all just depends on the individual circumstance. But that's kind of how I kind of grade grade them a little bit. It's based on I guess the material conditions of their upbringing to some extent.
at one level, you want American casualties, so the bullies back off and the oppressors
Hey, that's
back
what I
off,
said.
and they stop bullying and attacking Iran. But at the same
Oh, they're
time, when
saying
you
from
see the
Iran's
faces of
perspective.
these soldiers, you see that they're the human cost of the unjustified and unprovoked war that the U.S. and Israel are waging on
They didn't have
Iran
to
and the
die.
broader Middle East.
I want to ask you, Naveed, about your assessment with the way that Iran has gone after. I guess I would put it, energy, maybe trying to put a global economic cost on being attacked in terms of essentially closing the Strait of Hormuz. And we've seen some missiles falling on energy infrastructure across the Gulf. I think I read that because Qatar had to shut down LNG production. Apparently, it takes about 2 weeks to bring LNG production offline or back online after you've taken it offline. So essentially, it's going to create a
Hmm.
problem for the supply of energy. And I saw a report that South Korea, as a result, has something like 10 days or 9 days left of natural gas. So I'm curious what you think about this
I wonder
this
what'll
particular
happen.
aspect of Iran's strategy of trying to
South Korea goes dark. We'll see.
basically place an economic cost on being attacked by the way, a war that of course the Israelis and Americans initiated, but many European countries are starting to involve themselves in.
Ugh, the Europeans. I hate them. Grow a pair. Grow a pair. Europe, grow a pair. Stop following America doing everything that they do. Like, seriously.
That's right. So, I mean, Iranians, Lebanese, Palestinians, we're used to crises and we can manage crises. So, when COVID happened here, there was no hoarding. And right now, when you go to supermarkets, everything's stacked. Nobody is hoarding anything. Nobody's, buying things in bulk because they're used to crises and they come together and manage things. So, even if you might have civil unrest due to inflation or due to other reasons, when it comes to crises like these, people stand united. But then I think in the first world and in the West, people are not you. The pain tolerance is so much lower, and that's why I mentioned that if there
Our
are a
pain
lot of
tolerance
American
is nothing.
casualties,
Our pain tolerance is it's the worst we can like we as Americans can deal with is like slightly higher oil. Like if oil goes past like $5 a barrel, like we like revolt and like in the meantime like I don't know, the Palestinians and the Iranians have to suffer through like genocide and like I don't know, just it's insane how insulated we are from the impacts of our militarism abroad. Um, we'll see what happens, in the future. The destabilization will probably impact us a lot more with the blowback that comes from that. But, you know, who knows? What do I know? I'm just a YouTuber. I'm done with this video.